All right, guys, welcome back to our second lesson here on feudalism, on urbanization. And today we're going to be talking about feudalism and how urbanization worked during the so-called Middle Ages. So with that, go ahead, complete your class time warm-up, and then we'll get started here. So I turn on my light so you can, hopefully I can see things a little bit better. There we go. Okay. So what we're going to be doing today is pretty specific. We're going to be looking at how the feudal structure of the Middle Ages and the context of it really shaped how urbanization took place. And we'll get into how we do that. There's some pretty awesome things that we're going to do with that. Then we're also going to look at how feudalism, how the impact of it and kind of the setup that we had, which was medieval manners, is also going to affect everything from trade to exploration, daily life, those kind of things. So you're kind of getting a whole taste of the Middle Ages here, is kind of the idea, with a special focus, again, on cities. So first of all, there's a choose your own adventure game. Okay, you click right here on the paint splotch to play it. Please go ahead, play it, and pause this video, and here in a second, I'll do brief with what you should have seen. So from playing the game, you can see that you started off as a serf, which is another name for peasant, and you worked your way all the way up to king. Now, I tried to give you a sampling of everything in there from, typical behaviors to gender relations, on and on and on. But one of the things that I hope you saw, first of all, is that please recognize that it was very, very unlikely that somebody would ever go from being a serf all the way up to a king. That just would never happen. Second, you should have noticed that there was a very, very rigid structuring to society. Everybody kind of has their place. And with that, you should have seen that there was a really, really big emphasis on relationships and doing things for people, and in exchange, they do things for you. And that's what kind of the essence of feudalism is. And also, it's going to affect how cities develop and a whole bunch of other things in Europe at this time. So let's get to that. We're going to start off on our mini lesson here in a second, but I'm going to let you know right now what you're going to be doing with this lesson, okay, just so you're aware, is that you're going to be taking everything you learned in our mini lesson today, and you are going to be drawing a really early example of urbanization, and that is something called a medieval manor. Now, we'll talk about how this has to be laid out because it has to make sense with feudalism. So we'll be looking at stuff like geography and food supply and stuff like that. The biggest thing that you want to make sure of that when you design yours is that your design should take into account how feudalism worked. And so the urbanization of your city, your manor, if you will, should reflect that. All right. So let's get to this mini lesson. Let's talk about feudal relationships, the manor economy, and some consequences then that it's going to have for Europe at this time. So we're going to be looking very, very heavily here at relationships and how they order and regulate society. And also we're going to be taking a look at why stability is really, really important, okay, and why it's good for society to be stable normally. So let's talk a little bit about what Europe is like at this time. Europe is a disaster, okay? And basically, after the fall of the Roman Empire, there is no major power for about 1,000 years that is consistent enough to give people in Europe a sense of stability. And so what Europe goes through for about 1,000 years, from about 500 to 1500 CE, is these cycles of unity where, like, you might occasionally have like a strong king or something that might come together and capture things, and then it breaks apart and kind of descends into a purge-like kind of chaos. And so because there is no power that can ensure safety, okay, what people start to do is, for protection, we get this loosely organized system called feudalism that develops. And feudalism, in turn, is going to encourage that people begin to urbanize around small feudal manors, things that can keep them safe is kind of the idea. So let's talk about what that looks like, okay? So let's discuss what feudalism is. Okay, so feudalism is all about relationships. The thing that is so much fun in high school. It's an economic thing, it's a social thing, it's political. Again, the theme is that it provides local protection and stability. What it is not, though, it is not a single monolithic system. It varies greatly depending on time and place and context, and also it is a term that historians have now gone back and used. So again, we have to be kind of careful about this because this is a way of us understanding the time period and not necessarily how people at that time period understood themselves. But all that aside, okay, feudalism is all about obligation. And in the background there, you can actually see what a feudal manor looked like, and we'll talk about why people began to urbanize and kind of organize their lives around these ways, okay? So it has to do, again, with all about safety. So if you, were a serf, which is the lowest of the low on the feudal structure, you did not travel during your lifetime more than 5-10 miles probably from your manor. And the reason why is because you leave your manor, you're probably going to get killed by somebody. It's just, there is no control. It's all, chaos and the purge. And so what people begin to do then is they begin to band together, and then with that, they begin to come up with a system that can help them survive. It's kind of the idea. So you'll notice that I have kind of this color-coded system. Don't read in too much to that. Let's just talk about each level. So serfs are kind of like peasants, if you want to think of them that way. The reason why we're going to use the word serf here is that serfs are tied to the land, not literally, metaphorically, meaning that they are given land to work, they do not own it, and they work it, and in exchange for that, okay, having land to work and getting some of the food off of that, they provide food and money to the lords or monarchs. Okay, let's talk about, we'll kind of skip knights for a second. Lords and monarchs, what they do is that they get paid tribute by everybody, and in exchange, okay, they would provide protection for the people underneath them, typically in the form of knights, which then we have to finally get to knights. Knights are not the, and this is a big myth-busting thing that you need to be just aware of. Knights are not nice people. Knights were basically bloodthirsty mercenary thugs who were paid a lot of money to kill people. There's nothing gallant about being a knight, nor were they very nice individuals. Again, if you kind of think about like a suit of armor and how much that costs, these guys were all about making money and being very, very good at killing people. And again, it's all about protection. So in exchange for getting paid money and food, they provide loyalty to lords and they keep everybody safe. That's kind of the idea there, right? So if you understand that, okay, then you can kind of understand that how these people are kind of all tied together, right? Like you scratch my back, I scratch yours kind of things. Obviously, serfs are getting the pretty bad end of the deal, but okay, let's talk about why this matters. Okay, so these feudal manors, when they start developing this way, and when we get, because of feudalism, Europe becomes hyper local. Okay, so people really, like, if you want to think about like cities being connected to each other, or manors being connected to each other, that's not so much of an emphasis, especially at first. It focuses Europe inwards. Now, even though trade declined sharply, okay, and because of this, it is still present. The focus, though, for most manors is that they're going to try to be self-sufficient. They're going to try to take care of themselves and make sure that that they don't have to depend on anybody else to get what they need. Okay. Now that should kind of be the overall picture that I'd like you to get out of the feudal period. So I'd like you to answer this question before you go on. Just summarize on your notes. What factor drove urbanization in the form of medieval manors? Like, what context it did? Okay, so go ahead and answer that question. Pause the video, and we'll talk about the answer here in a second. Okay, so again, the answer you should have had there is that Europe's in chaos and you can't depend on anybody else. But things start to change, and let's talk about how. Okay, and this kind of gets to the expansion pack of the medieval manor, and that is basically is that Europeans, after, and again, taking this in like really broad strokes here, is that Europeans, after being stuck on medieval manners for so long, there is a growing demand for stuff that is not on them. And one year, I'll always remember this, I actually made like some of the medieval manor food. I can't do this anymore, for my classes to try. And it was like a potage, like terrible cabbage soup that was just like a very typical European manor food, and it was disgusting. It was so bad. And so what we start to find then is that trade between these manors starts to increase, and some of these, trade groups start to come together, and they start to form these new, groupings, okay, where different people would come to a single location to trade goods and services. And what that should sound like then is a town. And so we start to get some of the earliest, basically versions of what we could call like a town or a city. And so even though urbanization starts off as this like form of protection in the earliest parts of the Middle Ages, urbanization gradually begins to take the form of towns because it makes simply money, trade, the exchange of ideas happen, right? So again, notice like the different shifting of emphasis there behind why people begin to band together. So what I thought I might show you then is some of these goods then that Europeans were wanting, that they didn't have access to. And it basically, what I would do is I would write down everything that's in green that Europeans would have loved to have and they did not. So swords, paper, jewelry, silk, spices, all the fine fancy things that they couldn't get access to, they would be down for those. And again, that's, these would be things that Europeans would not have typical access to in terms of being on medieval manor. With that, okay, you only need to really write down one thing here with this, and that is, as you might imagine, the towns who have the best access to trade turn out to normally be the largest towns. And normally then that means they're close to the sea. So like Venice and Genoa in Italy, and again, that should make perfect logical sense. That's a word? Yeah, perfect logical sense, because again, if you have more access to trade, that means more people are going to want to stay there, which means your towns become larger, right? Now, with urbanization starting to kind of kick up a notch, there are, of course, byproducts of this. Number one, of course, is that, you're going to have some of the largest cities for the first time, anywhere from 10 to 100,000 people, but they are crowded, they are filthy, and also full of opportunity. And this is, again, we're talking in a time before the idea of sewers exist, right? So like people would just throw their waste out into the streets, and you would have animals just randomly roaming around. You kind of get the idea, right? And so the amount of, at the same time, opportunity combined with grossness cannot be under exaggerated here. By the way, if you can kind of see like the Black Death kind of coming here, you've got the right idea, right? We can see why that would occur. With that, okay, it's going to be time then to start actually making your own medieval manor. Okay, now this is not like a full city. That's not what we're making. We're talking about kind of going back to like the first version here. So let's talk about how to make your manor. Okay, so again, the whole emphasis here is that you're going to begin drawing this thing. It's going to be your creation. Okay, it's going to be your manor. You're going to be the lord or lady of your particular manor. And with that, the biggest thing is that your manor needs to make sense with feudalism, right? And so we should be able to see feudal relationships in your manor in terms of how it's designed. So let me give you an example. Okay, so I'm gonna skip ahead here a little bit and actually look at a model. And you can see here, this is actually, I've been to this city that this one was modeled off of. The student did not draw this. This is one that I found online. But this medieval manor makes a lot of sense when we look at it. So if you look here, we have kind of like a small town that's outside. That again makes sense. We would expect that those would be where serfs are living. Notice it's next to a river because, again, trade. But then inside here, we have the actual manor, and that's this part. Kind of looks like a small castle. There is a separate church, and also these houses in here would be for the knights or other nobles. They are not going to be living close to the serfs. And we should see that reflected in your design as well too, because again, that's the whole emphasis and about feudalism, is that everybody has a place, and those boundaries don't get crossed very much. Now with that, okay, here's another student model. I had a student draw this one. Okay, there's going to be a bunch of different ways that you can decide to draw your manor. Also notice people have churches in their manors. You should also have that as well, because Christianity has become a thing in Europe by this point. Okay, here's another example. Okay, you can see here like a small village and serf houses, a manor house, right? Most of your land, of course, should be dedicated to farming at this time. Again, your manor has to be self-sufficient, right? Here's a student drawing example, and again, you can kind of see the emphasis there we can see how those feudal relationships are actually happening in terms of how it's designed, right? So let's talk about then how you're going to make one. Okay, these are all good questions that you should be asking yourself, like what will take up the majority of your land? Farming. What natural or geographic features do you have to have for humans to live in your manor? So obviously, like water, land, shelter, right? Those kind of things. What are your serfs going to have, or going to have? And then what other kind of buildings are you going to have, and how should they be organized? So let's actually look at what's required, right? So you have to have places for your serf to stay. These are all the required elements, by the way, and I'm just going to go ahead and list them, and then we'll talk about how to draw them. A manor, which is like a small castle. A wall could be part of that manor, but if you want there to be a separate wall, you can do that too. You have to have a mill so that grain can be processed. And again, why do you need a mill so you can process grain? Because bread is like the most commonly eaten thing at this time. Europe's got tons of grain. And you also have to think about, how am I going to power my will? Well, your mill. That means that you need to be close to a moving water source, like a river, for example. Okay. Also, because Christianity is a thing in Europe at this time, you need a church. Okay, I will tell you, if you want to do multiple churches, that is probably not a bad idea. In all the castles of Europe that I have been to, never once have I ever seen a king or noble be willing to go to church with his stinky serfs that are next to him, so or her. Geographic features. Okay, you need to have a river, obviously. Okay, roads. Yes, they are going to be dirt roads. Please do not do as one student did one year and draw paved roads with yellow lines going down them. That was a real thing that happened. Fields. The majority of your manor and around it should be taken up with fields. It also, I would love it to be fully colored, although I completely understand if you somehow can't get access to coloring materials. And then also, there's a couple rationale questions that you'll need to answer, and we'll talk about how you do those here in a second. So a couple important notes. Please make sure to label your buildings and your features, okay? I will not be able to necessarily tell the difference between what a serf house looks like and, nobles' houses or, like a mill if you don't label them, okay? If they're just both boxes, I'm going to need some help there. And then second, okay, how you do it. You can do it on paper, that's totally fine, or you can do it on Google Drawing. And this may be a new app to you. I'll go ahead and teach you how to do that here in a second. I'll go ahead and do this in class as well. But let's take a look at these rationale questions. You will submit these separately, okay, on Schoology with your drawing if you do that online, or if you decide you'd like to do it on paper, you can always just answer these on the back. So let's take a look at these questions. Feudalism depended upon social obligations being met. Do you believe that medieval manors were organized to help people meet these obligations? So again, remember, you do this for me, I do this for you. Or do you think other factors are involved, like politics, social class, religion, etc.? And tell me using some examples. Okay, that's just a personal opinion question, but again, you should back it up with evidence. 2. Then tell me about your drawing. Justify why your buildings are in the position they are. Is there any strategic, economic, military, or social advantage to their position? Explain using examples from your drawing. Okay, so you answer both these questions. Again, please in depth, that's always nice, but with examples is what we're aiming for there. Now again, let's talk about how you make some of these things, okay? We will get into the Google Drawing. Now, Google Drawing is an amazing app. Again, I know everybody in here already has a Google account, so I'm going to go ahead and show this to you. I will say that some students prefer doing it on Google Drawing because, simply put, you know, drawing is hard, and it's difficult for me too. So let's talk about Google Drawing. Okay, Google Drawing is a really easy to use template that you can just do just about anything with. It's extremely flexible. Here's what I'd recommend. Okay, number one, you need to think of this as like a palette that you can drop any shape onto, you can draw things on, you can add text, etc., etc. I would recommend, if you're making your manor, that you right click and go ahead and change the background to like a green. And the reason why I would recommend you do this is because think about what the color of most of the land is going to be at this time. Probably green, right? Now, when you start to make your things for your manor, okay, like houses, your tool that you're going to probably use more than anything else is right over here, okay, and is going to be the shape button. Okay, you can see it, I'm kind of hovering it over right now. There are so many shapes to choose from. Okay, you can utilize the crap out of these things. So I can take a rectangle, okay, I can just draw one rectangle, and then I can literally just type in the word surf, okay, I can double click in there, I can click it, I can change colors, I can change the thickness around the box, and then this is the most helpful trick of all, lots of copy pasting. So I could literally just go right here and I could just copy paste all my surf houses. So, and I'm just shift clicking to do multiple selects there, or I could just drag and select like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and, so here's my surf houses, and voila, look at that, done, okay? So again, copy paste is a beautiful thing. Now again, I may not be happy with that arrangement. I probably would move it around because I would never expect that they would be this organized, but there you go, right? Then adding different elements just really comes down to you adding different things. So I'm going to go to the scribble tool here, and I'm going to add a river. So I just did a little scribble across the screen. I'm going to change the thickness to 24 points, and then I'm just going to change it to blue, and there we go. I've got a river now. Okay, so again, I can utilize this to my heart's content. Again, Google Drawing is an amazing tool that you can do a lot of stuff with. Shapes, you could draw a castle with shapes. It's really simple. Again, we're only doing a bird's eye view here, so don't think you have to actually do something that is like three-dimensional. That's not required. But there you go. Maybe you make this your castle, right? Or your manor, excuse me. And that's it. And then again, you could, if that's your wall going around your manor, you can go and you can add like a specific little manor house in here, right? You kind of get the idea. We can add all of our little different elements. Adding everything from roads to rivers works a lot the same way. Again, I can do something like this for a road. Okay, I can just take this and I can turn it brown. It's not hard. So there you go, right? The point that I want you to get out of this is that it's an immensely easy to use tool, okay? And copy pasting is your friend, okay? Like clicking and selecting stuff is immensely helpful in this, okay? So again, copy is Control C, paste is Control V. With all that, again, this is your manor. You get to design it how you want to. And what you could always do if you like is down here in the bottom right hand corner. Okay, you could always just make this canvas a little bit larger, just kind of extend it out, add a couple text boxes, and answer your rationale questions over here to the side. So you can just answer, you can just type in this box. Here's my answer to rationale number 1. Here's my answer to rationale number 2, and then you can just type them out, right? So there you go. When you're done with your drawing, it's really simple. You just go to File, Download as a PDF, and that's it. Okay, or you can download it as a picture and you can submit a picture file. That would be fine too. Okay. If you obviously you're doing it on paper, you're going to turn it in via paper. If you'd like to type out your things separately, again, you're going to submit that into Schoology separately. Other than that, that's really it. And that's it for today's lesson. So I really look forward to seeing your manners, and I will see you on the next lesson. Bye-bye.